now different. We're different. We used to be the same, and Frank, shut up.
The garage dog. He's very aggressive.
Well, he's short for one, and then he's he's just anytime he hears something. I mean, I think it's a good thing. I mean, if he hears a car pull up, he starts barking.
Right. We have, that's the alarm system that's always on whether we're here or not. He is he is here to notify us, hey, there's something going on outside of the garage. It's of no importance at all.
he'll bite you, but it won't hurt because I think he's afraid to fully bite.
So before we get into anything, let me tell you this. I should have told you this before we flipped on the microphones, but you're the one of very few people that I think will have an appreciation for this the way that I do. So I've been saving this for you. But there is a bar that I go to. It's a small little bar.
He's already told this to like 10 people.
And they have a handful of pinball machines. Okay, they got the Addams Family one, which is surprisingly good for how old it is. They have the Metallica one. You know, so many people will know this. There's a fad going on right now where they're taking a lot of the old bands and they're making pinball machines with their name and likeness and all that good stuff, and their music on there too, which is cool. Like you'll get a random song as you're playing.
Right.
And a lot of the things on the pinball game itself will have to do with their songs and records throughout the years. So I've played many of these different band ones. You know, a band that was not my favorite band, nowhere near my favorite band, but I think they got the best pinball machine is Iron Maiden.
Oh, there you go.
They have the Iron Maiden pinball game at the Brewdog Brewery.
Well, isn't that special?
Well, that's not, I'm getting sidetracking myself here, but that small bar that I go to, I was there on Friday evening and I was sampling some beers. I think I sent you a picture or two. They had they had some new beers that I'd never had before, and I was tasting them there, and the owners happened to be in the store. And they kind of quieted everybody down, and they made an announcement that last year was so good and profitable for them that rather than just, buying a fancy car or spending it all on themselves, they wanted to reward all of the, patrons that come in, all the very loyal customers that they have.
Yeah.
Because we are the ones that made them successful. Well, I mean, they run a good operation, but so as a thank you to all the customers, they are ordering 2 new pinball machines.
All right.
One is WWE.
Oh,
which I'm curious to see what wrestlers will be. I love the Macho Man, so I'm hoping Macho Man,
Ultimate Warrior.
The $1 Million Man's probably my second favorite, so I'm hoping he will be on there. You and I like Dusty. I like Dusty Rhodes once in a while. I like the little dance he does. You can make a whole pinball game off the Dusty Rhodes dance.
Yeah, it's Dusty Rhodes Pinball Wizard.
But this is one that you will like, I think, even more, is Primus. They're getting a Primus pinball machine, which I didn't know that they were making it. But
I am going to your bar to play that.
The first round will be on me.
Yes.
And I'm very stoked. You were a much bigger Primus fan than I was, but I do have a few songs that hold a special place in my heart.
Well, a quick story about the Primus is being a bass player. So you have the instrument. It wasn't one of those situations where I wanted to play guitar. Most bass player stories are, well, I wanted to play guitar, but they voted for me to play in the, bass in the band. Mm-hmm. That didn't happen to me. I just decided I wanted to play the bass in the orchestra, and then it was, okay, well, let me get electric bass. So that's then it was like, oh, let me try out this guitar thing. But so unique in that sense, but then you had bands like Red Hot Chili Peppers where I just didn't understand them.
Okay.
I
don't think they understand them.
Right, but it's like,
but they're good.
I didn't get like the whole just like funk music or anything. Like it didn't, like I thought it was like, this is very unique compared to all this other stuff. Like I'd hear them and go, that they're the same as like Jane's Addiction, but different. Mm-hmm. But then also I'd lump like the Beastie Boys into that category. but then I'd lump somebody like Primus into that category. Like they're all so unique that they have to be in their own category.
Yeah, they don't really fit the typical mold of any one genre.
Yeah, and I just remember like deciding that I need to get into Primus because people kept on asking, "Oh, so you like Primus?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, I don't know anything about them. I need to get them." So I bought, I believe it was Pork Soda.
Oh, yeah.
And I listened to it like 3 or 4 times in a row that day. And just the whole time going, I don't understand this. I don't get it. Like, I don't know what's good about this. I don't know if it's good. And then your buddy, Jerry, comes down the day I bought the disc. And was like, hey, Primus.
He always likes some different stuff.
He's like, I love these guys.
Yeah.
And you guys were going cruising around. And I said, he said, can I take the CD? I said, sure. You guys are going to come back later that night.
Right.
So I figured I'm getting my CD back later that night.
Did you get?
It was like 2.5 years later. I actually bought another copy.
You replaced it.
And then, but then somehow that copy got ruined or something. Like it like fell underneath a seat in my car and got like scratched up. And one time at a party or something, I ended up seeing Jerry and said, hey, Jerry, you still got my Pork Soda CD? He's like, or maybe he was like, hey, man, while you're here, here's your CD back. And it was like 2.5 years later. But by that point, like I don't think I talked a lot about it with people, but in my brain, like, you know, people always talk about like John Mayer told this story one time, like when he's on stage, you know, he's not John Mayer in his head.
Okay.
He's Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Okay. Yeah.
And for a long time of my playing, when I was on stage, I was not me. I was just my impersonation of
your bass playing alter ego
was it would be Les Claypool. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So I'm very much looking forward to the pinball machine. I don't have an arrival date yet. They didn't give a date on when they would receive them, but
I'm going. I am going.
Maybe we will do a little YouTube video on our phone or something.
We could do a live podcast from the bar.
Yeah, the Colonel playing Primus pinball for the very first time.
Yeah, I'll be singing along with all the jams. Too many puppies. What are you into? I love this song called "Too Many Puppies," which is, I think, Electric Grapevine. That's one of my favorite Primus songs.
Don't quiz me on Primus. I will fail the quiz.
Oh, they're so good. I just a big. Shut up, dog. Probably nobody can hear the barking, but I can hear.
We can hear it. We'll just talk over them.
All right. So not only does your bar have maybe the coolest pinball machine ever. Mm-hmm. I mean, because like
I don't have it yet.
The Aerosmith one would be cool, or like
I really like the Aerosmith one.
AC/DC or
Guns N' Roses has one.
Guns N' Roses would be good, but that's very standard.
Yeah, you don't expect to see a Primus
one.
That's what's going to be exciting.
Taking it to another level.
Yeah.
I have a friend, Nolan. We both drove the same car in high school, and he was a huge Primus fan. Didn't play bass, though. That's all. What baffled me the most was that he didn't play bass. Mm-hmm. Like, he's maybe the biggest Primus fan I've ever met in my life, and he doesn't play bass. It just like baffles me. So your bar has is going to have a very cool pinball. My bar does not have a cool pinball machine, but that's not also what makes us different. You are on TV. So you went from just a podcast host to on TV. Mm-hmm. And you kind of talked about it in one of the other episodes where you talked about being interviewed and going up. But the show is called The Lake Erie Murders, mm-hmm. and it's on Discovery ID.
Mm-hmm. Investigation Discovery, or ID channel for short.
Yeah, it was 3-part series. So here's what's strange. It's called The Lake Erie Murders, but it's a series. So the first series is a 3-part series on the Amy Mihalovic case, and that's the episodes you are on. So if anybody is looking to see those, you appear in, out of the 3 episodes, you appear on episode number 2 and episode number 3.
Yep.
But this is true. In my mind, I remember you saying, hey, I'm going to be interviewed for this thing, this Amy Mihalovic documentary thing. Mm-hmm. But I was 100% convinced that it was just this local thing. That's just, it was just going to be something that maybe played in the Bay Village area. So as the show is approaching and the more we talked about it, then I was like, wait, this is going to be on ID? Mm-hmm. Like, that's kind of a big deal. Mm-hmm. But I was still convinced that it was supposed to just be a local thing. And so then I was like, okay, well, he hasn't made much of a big deal about it. It's 3 episodes, and then we've both been filmed before, so we know that, you could be filmed for 2 hours and they only use 2 seconds or maybe none.
Or they don't use you at all, yeah.
So you were kind of being secretive about...
Well, I held back. Right. I held back. In actually, some of my close friends and even relatives, I did receive some backlash because they're like, "Hey, I heard from somebody else that you're going to be on this thing," and so I watched it, and it turned out really good. They wanted to talk about it, and I had to offer a lot of apologies to a few people because, like you said, it was one of those things. I didn't want to tell a bunch of people I was going to be on something and then they watch, especially finding out it's a 3-hour tour and, hey, watch this thing. I'm going to be on it. And then you're not on it. What kind of garage moron do you look like?
Right. But here's the thing is like, so by not trying to look like an arrogant dick face.
Okay.
You then actually end up looking like an arrogant dick face. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Like you didn't mean to because you're like, well, I don't want to waste your time.
I didn't feel good. I didn't feel that bad about it until now.
But then once they saw it, they're like, this son of a bitch, he's doing such cool shit with his life, he can't even tell me about it.
Can't even bother to let me know.
What was interesting is so I knew that there was a possibility you're going to be on this thing. So I didn't want to like shoot out to social media that, hey, Nick's on this thing again. What if you have people watch for 3 hours and you are kind of convinced that you're brought in at the last minute and they're not going to use much of you if they use you?
Okay, so let me kind of would it be okay if I take you through the process here a little bit?
I mean, I don't give a shit. You're the superstar.
So
let me roll out the red carpet for you. You want some champagne?
I actually spoke with these people multiple times before we filmed anything.
Yeah.
And I had very lengthy phone calls with many of the persons involved in the production of this documentary. The thing though is in the early stages and actually for the majority of my involvement with them, they weren't even certain it was going, in the beginning, they weren't certain they were even going to film anything.
Right.
Then they weren't certain if they did film anything, if it would ever be on TV. So it's like where I was asked to help in the very beginning was I was contacted by them who said, "Hey, we've heard that you're pseudo expert in this particular case.
Yeah.
And we are not from Bay Village. We're not from the area. We are just reaching out to people that seem to know a lot about this case to figure out if there's even enough here for a story."
Right.
So I would talk to several different people. The cool thing that I did like, because you and I have done, and you've done them separately as well, but you and I have done these together where we talk to TV or podcast or whatever. And a lot of times we're often speaking to more than one person all at once, which I can't stand because people talk over one another, ideas get lost in the shuffle, so forth and so on. But in all these instances, I only spoke with one person, and then they would like kind of shuffle me to somebody else, and I'd speak to a different person on the phone the next time. And so that part of it was a lot of fun because they're looking for information and angles to tell their story. And so that part was great. And then when we actually filmed it, it was filmed near Bay Village. So it wasn't, they didn't come to Columbus to film me. I drove up to.
You're not that special.
No,
what you're trying to say.
I drove up to Lakewood.
Okay, yeah.
And we filmed it there. And at the time,
because your scene looks like the same house as Bill's scene.
He may have been in the same home. Yeah.
Bill from what's his podcast called?
Who Killed Amy Mahalovic?
Which is the name of the docuseries as well. Or
yeah.
The section of the Lake Erie murders.
Yeah, so to kind of be clear,
yeah,
and this won't be crystal clear because I don't 100% know myself.
Because you were drunk.
But to be clearer, the first 3 episodes are an hour long, and each one discusses the abduction, the murder investigation, and what's happened since then in Amy's particular case, 1 through 3. Right. After that, it's my understanding that they will do a new case, but each case will be a singular episode. So that's why it's Lake Erie Murders, because there might even be some solved cases along the way that they discuss on the show.
But you don't think you're not in any of that?
No, I never discussed any, and that's why I say this won't be crystal clear because I don't know fully what they're doing.
Right.
They don't need to tell me what they're doing. That was my only involvement was Amy's case. And I'm curious to see which cases they pick because, most of them they're all going to take place around the Lake Erie area.
Yeah.
There's a chance some of the cases we've covered here. I mean, we covered Marilyn Shepard's case.
Yeah.
And there's something that might be in the works that you and I have kind of planned out with Mr. James Renner about a Cleveland case.
Right.
I don't think that one will be in there because it's not, the proximity to Lake Erie is pretty far. But I'm curious to see what cases they cover because we also covered Polly Klaas, right? Did I say her name right?
No,
we didn't cover. No. Nope. Who am I thinking of? Polly Klaas, the girl that went missing. They've never found her. And remember that they even had they received that ransom note or a ransom phone call, and one of the detectives dressed up like her mother to go deliver the money.
What do we? Yeah.
And they arrested the guy. And it turned out he had nothing to do with her. They don't think he had anything to do with her disappearance.
But I don't think we definitely didn't call the case by her name though.
May not have been.
No.
Sometimes we call them interesting things.
Sometimes,
and other times
sometimes they're called interesting things.
Interesting things. Featured next week on True Crime Garage.
Interesting things, part 1.
But so the filming process, nobody else that they were filming that day was present when I was there being filmed. It was me and all the crew, let's say. And the weird thing is that you can't see on my parts and pieces, and I'm sure it was the same for the other people involved. But, the camera's facing me, and then behind that camera is like 8 or 9 people.
Right.
like staring at you. They got lights on you. You can barely see their faces.
And they're all sitting in different ways.
They're sitting in different ways, but some of them are kind of huddled together.
Yeah. And sometimes you give an answer and then people start talking. You can't hear them, but you go, I know that they're talking about my answer.
Right. They're whispering something to themselves.
Hey. That's when I go, hey.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what you think.
But the thing that was interesting for me is, you and I here in the garage, we're in charge of how we do the show. What we say, what we don't say, and what makes it onto the show, what doesn't make it onto the show.
Well, I used to have a say until you became a celebrity.
And during this was, even during the filming process, sometimes they would, cut. Can you say it? Can you say, don't say that? Like there's some things that they were just straight up like, we don't want you to say that. And they're like, okay, why?
Which is my favorite part.
Or don't use a person's name. That was really the big thing.
Yeah.
Like when you're talking about specific suspects or people in the story and you mention their name, sometimes they can't legally put that in there. Or they didn't want to risk the legality of doing such.
That was one of the funniest things when we were... Basically what we did was we shot a pilot but not actually an episode. It was just basically a bunch of footage to create almost like a long trailer.
Mm-hmm.
They call it a sizzle reel, and that's what they created when they wanted to shop our show as a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't talk much about that. I think we've talked about it from time to time. I come here from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
But the best was the producer and the directors were saying, we really want to get across that we're trying to solve the cases. So I'm behind the camera, and Nick has told me multiple times, I'm not comfortable doing this. I don't really want to do this.
I don't like the camera.
And so
the camera does not like me.
I think he was first. He's like, well, we'll interview Nick first. I'm like, okay, do that. And so at some point they're trying to get him to say, like, our goal is to try to solve one of these cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all they're trying to get him to say. They're trying to get him to say with some enthusiasm, maybe a little passion. And so he says something. And they say, talk more about like how we're going to solve something.
Be a little more aggressive.
Be a little more. And then at some point he just yells, and we're going to solve all these cases. Every one of them, or something like that.
I don't think go ahead.
But it was like, so like we already talked to this director. We already talked to the producer. Like we've talked about the fact that chances are when you go to cover some of these cases, just like we do every week, yes, we're trying to uncover new information. We're trying to uncover different ways to look at the case.
Trying to remind the public that this isn't solved.
Right. Can somebody take this information, run with it? Can we solve something? Hopefully we can get some more answers for the victim's family. Yes, that's what we're trying to do. Are you going to do that for every case? Probably not. That's just the reality of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that, like, we already kind of talked about this, we got to be realistic. We're probably not going to solve all the cases, but if we can shed light on them, we're doing a good thing. And to see you just like screaming at the camera, we're going to solve all these cases and get those bastards or something. And then the producer sort of looked at me and she was like, we're not going to solve all the cases.
We need to scale that back.
I'm like, yeah, I know we're not going to.
That day, when we filmed that, I think I even pulled you aside and I was like, look, man, I could do this if I had about 3 beers and a smoke. Like, yeah. I was, because
we're filming inside a barn, and the whole production crew was inside the barn,
mm-hmm.
and we're outside the barn.
Mm-hmm.
As you're like, I'm nervous. I was like thinking, why are you nervous? Like,
well,
it's just a camera.
I'm someone that it's less about the camera and more about the structure of the way we do things. Like, so sometimes, and this can be heard on some of our shows, and often it's edited out, but we have certain materials in front of us. We have certain things available at our fingertips here. And when you turn on the camera, you don't have those things available to you. Nobody wants to see some guy hiding behind a piece of paper that has his notes on it. So I don't know if those notes are a crutch or whatever you want to call that, but it is some kind of security blanket for me, where because a lot of our stories involve very detailed information, dates, places, mm-hmm. names, and that stuff gets jumbled up in my little bird brain sometimes.
Right.
And
brain,
so anyway, but that's why the camera makes me feel uncomfortable, because I can't use that crutch.
We're going to solve them all.
So here's the other thing. So Lake Erie Murders, that episode came out, the 30th? Yeah. So Sunday night.
Well, let me just finish this part. So I'm sitting in my recliner. I get through, there's 3 episodes. So I get through the first one, and I decide this is interesting, and it's very well put together. It's very well done. So I go, I'm just going to watch the next 2. And by the way, Nick's not in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So then I go, okay, well, I gotta keep watching for his part. But after the first one, I went, okay, I've seen all the major players. We see Renner in there. We see Bill.
Mm-hmm.
We see the family. I go, okay, maybe Nick's just cut out of all this,
mm-hmm.
right? So I have a buddy that's watching it. My buddy Morgan, he's watching at the same time. I end up falling asleep in my recliner because it's like that's what happens. You push the button, and it
Comfort zone.
puts you in the comfort zone, and you fall asleep. And so then I wake up and look at my phone, and the text message is, "Wait, Nick's in this? Oh my God. You didn't tell me Nick was in this."
Oh, he was going to watch it anyway and didn't know that.
Because he's recently got really into the Amy Mihalovic case, and I'm like, it's going to be on. So then I have to rewind. About halfway through the second episode, here comes you popping up on the screen. Nick from True Crime Garage, or Nick, True Crime Garage podcast host, or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And
that was my request, by the way. I told them if they used my voice or my face at any point, it had to say True Crime Garage on the screen.
Yeah. And,
that's okay, right?
Well, my first thought was, we're going to be billionaires. Everybody that all these people that are watching the show right now are going to listen to us, and we're going to become billionaires. No. My first thought was, oh, cool, he made it, because you spend this time doing work and doing these interviews, and for them not to use you. And then they kept on using you in cool ways. Like they'd cut to the scene and you just hear your voice leading into it.
Yeah.
And then they'd show you for a second. And then probably like 10 minutes into when you were being shown, I was like, oh, there he is again. There he is again. And I thought, well, now he's a lot bigger part of this documentary. And so you're a lot bigger part in the second part. And then also they show you a bunch in the third part as well. And crazy thing about this, somebody that, 5 years ago is just studying this case as a hobby, and then to end up on a national publicized TV program as an expert of the case. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
I'm not going to lie to you. I got more excited receiving the phone calls from them than the actual filming portion of it, or even the release of it. Like, that felt like a bigger pat on the back for me. But here's the other thing too, in regards to, it came out December 30th, Sunday night. I had already filmed that interview before we even did CrimeCon last year. And we did CrimeCon, June or May?
Yeah, May, I think.
Yeah. So it by the time it came out, I had almost kind of I didn't forget about it, but you know what I mean?
Probably forgot how well you did or didn't do.
I actually, I also didn't know how good it was going to turn out, because I've seen some of these true crime documentaries and they're terrible. And I've seen other ones that are fantastic.
Some are brilliant, some are shit.
Yeah, and I think the final product was very good. And then regarding my portion of the filming, I knew fairly well what they wanted me to talk about in advance. Just a couple days beforehand, they sent me that information. Here's a laundry list of things we're hoping to have time enough to speak with you about. Well, the overwhelming majority of all those items were things that happened in the case and in the story after she was found, or around the time her body was found, which was, for those that watched, they know that it was months later. Right. So that's part of the reason why you don't see me in any portion of the first first hour, was because we didn't, I wasn't asking any questions about that portion of the case.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people on social media would, well, why weren't you on the show? I just thought, I didn't ask me to, but then I thought, but I'm not, I'm not, and never would I claim to be a crime expert. Not that you would run around claiming that you were, but
I wouldn't claim that ever. But regarding Amy's case, I will say this, and people can think this is smug or whatever, but
fuck them.
I do feel very strongly that I know quite a bit more about the case than the average citizen, even the average Bay Village citizen.
Right.
But guess what? In the end,
chicken butt.
When they finally solved this thing, a lot of that information that I know or that I've read about and researched over the years is probably useless information. And we know that from doing our show. There's, we'll talk about a case for 2 hours and a lot of different speculation along the way. Some of those cases ended up being solved. And some of them, there was good speculation involved, and there was also things that at the time may have seemed important, but when you get the final answer, the final solution, you find out it had nothing to do with the actual case.
Right. Yeah, no, but I think it was cool. And like I said, it's put together very well, and it's such an interesting case. And the fact that there is so many suspects, and they do it in a good way, but it's also a little annoying because you hear about a suspect, and since they don't give names, to dive more into that angle, it's kind of hard to do. You have to do more research to figure out who they're actually talking about, and then dive in that way. But no, I thought it was really well put together, and not saying that I'm not that I'd ever, if somebody ever called me a crime expert, well, I'd think, well, at some point we did enough episodes that you could call me that.
We're more of a true crime podcast expert than a crime expert.
Yes, and but yeah, I don't know if I'll ever. But if you need somebody to talk about crime, there's nobody on this planet that can flap their gums and circle around and beat around bushes of nonsense more than these two guys. And I will challenge anybody. You motherfuckers want to test me? I will make this show go 24/7.
Right, I will talk to you.
That is
about
24 minutes, 7 times a week, 24/7. No, seriously. I remember the one time we were about ready to record for OJ, and we're like, "Oh, are we going to be able to talk for 3 episodes?" I think that was the question.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up spending like 4.5, 5 hours on the phone.
That's right, because we had never done. Had we even done a double? We had done double episodes Maybe. By that point, I think. But 3 seemed like a lot of heavy lifting. And you're right. We got on the phone over the one night. In one night, didn't we talk for like 4 hours on the phone?
Yeah, it was almost 5 hours. And I remember
like,
thinking,
oh, shit, we should have just recorded this.
We should start recording these things.
It would make the other work a little easier. But back to the Amy case. So, and this is a credit to Investigation Discovery and the producers and director and everybody involved. And I don't think people understand how many people had to have been involved in this for them to put together this story, this true crime story. And a credit to them is, as someone who has followed the case for so many years and tried to digest everything I can get my hands on and research this case, it was interesting for me to watch it and actually learn a couple of things that I didn't know. So that's a credit to them. It was interesting
or discredit to you. No,
that Mark Mahalovic said that there was a couple things he was even unaware of, and his only criticism of the documentary was he felt that there were so many people in his life, especially at his work and in his business, that supported him through that very, very difficult time. And unfortunately, it will always be a difficult time for Mark. But he wished that the documentary would have brought up some of those people and said, hey, these are the people that helped the family get through this.
Right.
These are his, and he speaks very highly in the newspapers of his employer, saying, they were helping out with the reward money. They were being accommodating to me during this time in my life.
Yeah.
And he basically says, I don't know that if I could have gone on without the support system of the community, their friends, family, and their businesses, their employers at the time. He says, I don't know if I could have made it through there. And so that's interesting to hear. And kudos to Mark for not forgetting those people that helped him get, on to carry on.
Right.
I did read an article that came out in a Cleveland newspaper, and I should have put this in my notes because I hate to say Cleveland newspaper, not reference their exact name, but
right.
The article came out on Thursday or Friday, so just days after the airing of the show, and they said that they've received 50 tips regarding the case. So you're talking about a case that's 1989, 1990, right. Abduction in 89, body found in 90. All these years later, there's still some tips that come in because of this, and that's just within days. I wonder what that number is up to now. But one thing to keep in mind, and I don't mean to kind of set something up that sounds so very positive and then tear it down so quickly, but you do have, I think it was Spetzel, the police chief up in Bay Village. He did say, yes, we received a bunch of tips, which is they're very thankful for, and they have always said they believe that solving this case will come from the public.
Right.
He did want to voice that some of these tips that they've received are not technically new ones.
Right.
They're people contacting them that they've spoke to in the past. But he didn't say all of them aren't new. So there is some light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, and some of the people are watching the docuseries and saying, hey, they left out this little detail about this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're calling up and going, hey, you forgot this detail. And they're going, yeah, we know about that. So that's probably a lot of the tips that they're getting.
And the best thing that, amongst some other things, but one really good thing that the documentary will do, and that, we have done on our shows, Dateline does it, 2020 does it, other true crime podcasts do it. One of what I think is the best thing is to remind people that it's unsolved. We talked about this. You and I have both voiced this many times over and over again, especially in the Brian Schaefer case, that we live in the town where he went missing from.
Right.
And we would hear rumors on the streets and bars and restaurants, talk to people that would go, yeah, they found that guy.
Yeah.
Or, oh, yeah, they solved that thing.
He was on vacation.
Right.
And the thing, too, is you wouldn't know if they're telling the truth or not.
Right.
I mean, you just go, what? They found him? And then because you're into crimes and you're into cases, you go home and you do a little searching, and then you realize they didn't find him.
Yeah, the reminder of cases being unsolved, I think, is a huge thing because it gets lost through the years that go by. People just assume sometimes that something has been solved, or they hear a bad rumor or bad information, and they think a case is solved that it in fact still needs the public's help.
Yeah, and when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me, so we shouldn't assume.
One thing that's weird, though, and I think this is an appropriate place to address this. I wanted to address this at some point, so all right, we'll just throw it out there. But Ted Lamborghini was not discussed on the documentary, and there has been a lot of talk, some rumblings by people I know and people I've spoken to that question. We brought up Ted Lamborghini in the Oakland County child killing case, and he was later found in the greater Cleveland area many years after the fact. He's a suspect in my mind in the Oakland County child killing case, and proximity would put him in the area at the time of Amy Mihaljevich's abduction and murder. I'm not saying he's the guy, but I find it interesting that all these years later, I really feel like there's bits of a grassroots movement to include him as a viable suspect in the Amy Mihaljevic case. And the thought being that maybe he wasn't her abductor or murderer, but if he was involved in the Oakland child killing case, Oakland County case,
right,
that it very well possibly could have been a ring of individuals that carried out those murders.
Yeah.
And if so, did that ring, when the heat was turned up, did they move from that area and go elsewhere? Now, did they go to Johnny Gosch land? Did they go to Amy Mihaljevic land? Did they go, you know what I mean?
Jacob Wetterling.
Well, we caught that guy. But I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Right.
Could he have known any individuals that were involved in anything. So I do want to throw that out there. And you and I have talked about revisiting some cases, and Amy's case has always been on that list. And because we feel like, we covered it, but we really covered James Renner's version of what went down.
Yeah.
We never really covered, I don't think, what my thoughts and feelings 100%, your thoughts and feelings 100%. So that should be on the short list of cases to probably re-examine at some point.
Yeah.
And then we could really dive into the Ted Lamborghini connection if there is one. And but I think what we do for now is I think we let the smoke clear a little bit. This documentary came out. They did a good job. See what materializes from this.
And to be clear, this happened in Cleveland, but her body was found quite a ways away from that area, right?
Yeah, Ashland County. And
so how far of a distance was that? I mean, you might not know exactly off the top of your head.
Well, remember, I drove from the shopping plaza where she was last seen to the dump site, and it's about a 55 minute drive from point A to point B.
Right.
Now, obviously, she was taken somewhere else in between all of that, but that, should give you, I don't know mileage, how many miles exactly it is. I'm sure as the crow flies, I'm sure you could get there a lot faster than 55 minutes.
Right.
Because it's a lot of zigzagging around, and it really is out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, that's the simplest way to describe that area where her body was found.
I'm going to just, since we're on this topic, I just want to hit this for about a couple minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Sasha Baron Cohen,
Yeah, the actor,
he played
writer.
Borat.
Yeah.
Borat.
Nice. This is nice. Oh, nice.
Very nice. I hope this stupid thing doesn't play automatically.
Thought he exposed a pedophile ring while filming Who is America?
Yeah, so basically what happens, this is the story that just came out, I think December 22nd.
Late December, okay.
So just recent, but here's what I'm bringing it up for a reason.
Okay.
So he, speaking to Deadline, Cohen explained that when he was filming under the disguise of an Italian playboy, Gio Morando, for a skit, they're in Las Vegas, and so he is playing a character,
and he's quite convincing with it.
And the whole idea is that he's playing a character, but he's not letting the person know that he's talking to that he's in character. They think he's a real person.
They think that's his real personality. That's what he looks like. That's his likeness. That's his personality.
Right. So he's Gio, the Italian playboy, and he's in Las Vegas, and he's talking to a hotel concierge.
Okay.
And then the conversation became very disturbing. So it says, while we're shooting, some of this is at the time of all the Harvey Weinstein stuff, he said. We wanted to investigate, how does someone like Harvey Weinstein get away with this
victimizing people.
Right. And the network that surrounds somebody like this person. So we decided that Gio would interview this concierge in Las Vegas. Well, during the interview, I revealed that basically Gio has molested an 8-year-old boy.
So he's acting like he's in real life, and he's kind of tossing it out there that his character that he's playing has molested an 8-year-old boy to the concierge.
Right. Okay. Now, mind you, this is extreme comedy, and we thought that the guy would leave the room. Hey, I'm this playboy, but hey, I molested this 8-year-old boy.
Yeah, and
then the concierge would be like, well, fuck you, dude, and leave the room. Instead, the concierge stays in the room, and I go, listen, you got to help me get rid of the problem. Here is where Cohen explains that the concierge gave him advice on how to silence the child with even talk about murder, continued, the guy starts advising Geo, the character, how to get rid of the issue. They even at one point, again, talked about murdering the boy, and
my God, what hotel is this?
And then the concierge is just saying, "Well, listen, I'm really sorry, and in this country, we can't just drown the boy. This is America. We don't do that." And then in the end, he puts him in touch with a lawyer who can silence the boy. And then also at some point, I think he also explains to the guy that something like where they can silence the boy, but also that he can get him other boys. And so Cohen and his team of producers immediately handed their footage over to the FBI, who Cohen says decided not to pursue it. He added he thought perhaps there's a pedophile ring in Las Vegas that is operating for these very wealthy men. And also, I think there at some point it was not only could they get rid of the boy, but they could find boys for him if he wanted them.
But when they say get rid of the boy, it almost sounds like I'm confused because my first thought is like,
or silence him.
Kill the boy, silence the boy, get rid of the boy.
But then the concierge says, we don't kill people.
It sounds like, what do? You pay off the kid or something? Is that what he's hinting at?
Maybe they get a lawyer involved and they sign an agreement. They pay him. And then the boy can't bring charges, I guess. But that wouldn't stick because just because you got paid off from a lawsuit, that's civil. That's not criminal. So I don't know. It's a very weird story, and I don't think it's that strange that the FBI. Here's what the FBI did: the FBI took the information, then they go, and then they tell Cohen, we don't know if we're going to pursue it or not.
Right.
Right. That's what they say on everything.
Right.
We'll take a look into it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever they gave him, they're looking into. I mean, that's what makes the FBI so fucking gangster. Is they just go, yeah, I'm probably not going to pursue it. And they probably got a bunch of people now undercover in Vegas trying to crack this thing.
Well, you're right. Gangster. And what's cool about that is that they don't really have a lot of people that they have to answer to, a lot of organizations that they have to answer to. And then even the ones that they do have to answer to, a lot of the stuff that they're doing is happening under the cloak of darkness, so to speak. We don't know everything that they're doing or everything that they're not doing. So,
but that's what makes it so gangster.
Right.
Like, we might not pursue this.
And what would be great is if there is a ring out there, if there is a group doing this terrible stuff, what would be great is I feel like if you got one of them and you got hardcore evidence on one of them, I don't think it'd be very long until they start talking and you can easily grab
domino effect.
Yeah. Make a big arrest.
Hoo-wee. What's up with that?
And then you know what that would mean. I shouldn't say. I don't know.
Got him. What does that mean?
Sasha Baron Cohen would have solved a real crime.
Yeah, but
well, actually not him. Geo solved the crime.
Right. Geo, the Italian playboy. But just think about this for a second. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Just one little second. He gets this information because their character, they think it's funny to go extreme and say, yes, I molested an 8-year-old boy.
Mm-hmm.
So could you imagine? Here's what's funny about Sasha is when he is on one of his characters, hilarious. But I've also seen him in interviews where he's super serious.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to put on his super serious face, go down to the FBI with the evidence and say, oh yeah, and by the way, the joke that started all this conversation was that I molested an 8-year-old boy. But here's what you know for sure, is that he did not molest an 8-year-old boy, because if there was any skeletons in his closet,
they would have dug them up.
He would have never gave this information to the FBI.
Yeah, and he wouldn't be around in the public to have this article that came out.
But could you imagine, like the FBI agent. Oh, Sasha, thank you. And you said what to him? That you molested an 8-year-old boy?
Yeah. Can we turn on the cameras, please?
Yeah. And you thought this was funny?
Right.
You think this is funny, Sasha? No, but I've always liked his work, and you gotta applaud a guy for at least trying to do what he thought was the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that would, again, like I said, it'd take a lot to come forward because you have to then start with, I made this joke that you're definitely not going to find funny.
Right.
So,
right.
Sasha, the Garage, we salute you and your effort to bring down evil. Cheers, mate.